Sorry, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Start again. Yeah. All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the Planning Committee. And the first item on our agenda is apologies for absence.
None yet, Chair.
Thank you. Second item is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Any? No hands? No. Thank you. Item 3 is to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meetings as a correct record. And you can see two sets there, starting at page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, page 5, and page 6. Somebody move them as a true record, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Item 4, any items for deferral or withdrawal?
No, Chair.
Anyway, no. Item 5 then is a Commons registration, and it's the application to correct the register of Commons land. And that's over to you, Jonathan.
Good afternoon, members.
Thank you.
This report concerns an application to amend the Register of Common Land to correct an alleged error whereby the rights associated with Pelican Farm exercisable over Register Unit CL74 have in fact been recorded as exercisable over Register Unit CL45. The application was made under Section 19(2)(b) of the Commons Act 2006 by Mr Tyrone Vernon Malcolm Davis of Tylcoch Farm, Velindre, and was received by the Commons Registration Authority on the 4th of December 2019. This application relates to the rights located at Register Unit CL45. The entry was originally recorded on the register in 1968 following an application by Mr Davis. The result of that application was the recording of the register of a right to pasture and estovers at all times, the right to carry bracken, raise 30 head of cattle and 150 sheep. The rights were recorded as being exercisable over Register Unit CL45, i.e. Kevin Drum and Graig Vow Commons. The applicant, Mr Davis, contends that the recording of those rights exercisable over CL45 was an error, and the intention was to record the rights over CL74, i.e. Pentoin, Mawr and Craig Abedu Commons. The effect of the application before you today, if granted, would be to remove the rights from CL45 and record them over CL74. Section 19(2)(b) of the Commons Act allows any person to make an application to correct a mistake in the Commons Register that was not made by the Commons Registration Authority, where the amendment would not affect the extent of any land registered as common land or as a town or village green, or what can be done by virtue of a right of common. The onus on proving the case rests with the applicant, and the correct test for determining is the balance of probabilities. The procedure for determining the application for correction is contained in the Commons Act 2006, Correction, Non-Registration or Mistaken Registration Wales Regulations 2017. These regulations require that applications are publicised, notice given to statutory constituencies, the owners of the land affected by the application, the owners of any rights of common which are exercisable over the land affected. The notice was published on the 5th of February 2020 and 2 objections were received. One objection was received from a commoner with recorded rights to graze on CL74 and one was received from the Open Spaces Society. Mr Davis, the applicant, has provided a sworn statutory declaration in support of the application as evidence to show an error occurred when he made the application to register the rights in 1968. This statutory declaration states he has grazed CL74 for 60 years and has never grazed on CL45. He has evidence from the Commons Association, who manage both of the commons, and they state that they have never received any complaints from the graziers with regard to the fact his animals graze on CL74. And they also confirm that he has grazed his animals on CL74. The information Mr Davis has supplied supports the fact that an error was made in the original application. It is noted that his land the heel is directly abut CL74 and is some way away from CL45. So although this isn't conclusive in itself, it does suggest the rights should have been recorded against CL74. Now, the first objector questioned the validity of the application due to the fact the applicant took 50 years to address the error in recording the rights, but the current legislation wasn't in force at that time, so there wasn't the same mechanism. Also, these rights were considered at the Commons Commissioner hearings in the 1980s and 90s, and records show that Mr. Davis objected to CL45 being registered, but the change was not made at that time, but we do not have any reason for that decision. But as I said, the legislation was not in force at that time. Now, the objection submitted by the Open Spaces Society raises a point of law to consider. The Open Spaces Society dispute that section 19(2)(b) can be used to determine these types of applications. Now, section 19(2)(b) only allows amendments to the register where the change would have no effect on the extent of any land registered as common land or as a town village green, or what can be done by virtue of a right of common. It is this the second point that the Open Spaces Society dispute. If the application does affect what can be done by a virtue of a right of common, the application will fail. But the explanatory notes to the regulation state that section 19(2)(b) may be used to correct any mistake made by the Commons Registration Authority or another person, provided that the amendment would not affect the extent of land registered as common land, nor the quantification of rights of common. The application before you today is not seeking to correct the quantification of rights in the register. It seeks only to amend the area of common land over which the rights are exercisable. So if the Open Spaces Society interpretation of the legislation is correct, it would effectively mean that section 19(2)(b) would be redundant, as every proposed change would be a change in what could be done by virtue of a right of common. This issue hasn't been tested in the courts, but the council have taken specialised external legal advice, which agrees with the council's interpretation of the legislation. Further details of this was provided in the report before you today. So in conclusion, there is no reason to dispute the applicant's claim that an error was made at the time the rights were originally recorded in 1968. This application does not seek to change the extent of any land registered as common land or what can be done by virtue of a right of common. Therefore, the provision of section 19(2)(b) of the Act have been satisfied, and it is considered the application should be accepted and the necessary changes made to the register. Thank you very much. Any questions? Sorry, members.
I know.
No, carry on.
Okay. We did have Mr. Howell Davis. Is he wishes to address the committee? Mr. Davis, are you with us?
No, he doesn't seem to be, unfortunately, Chairman. No.
On the list there. Okay. So, Will Evans, you got your hand up there. Welcome, Will.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just your attention. I joined the meeting at 2:05.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any member wish to speak? Councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it, for a lay person to understand? But it would appear that no one is being put at a disadvantage by this application. It's just a recording, a paper record, or a recording correction. If I'm right in thinking that, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong. And then, is there any means of appeal for the objectors?
Yes, Councillor, you are correct. It is just regularising the situation. The first objector, he obviously has been aware that Mr Davis has grazed his animals for the last 60 years over the land, and so this isn't a new application or will come as a surprise, because it's just regularising the existing situation. As regards an appeal, there is no an appeal for the objectors, but obviously they could, like any public law decision, apply for judicial review, or even the Open Spaces Society could potentially, though we haven't been told that is likely or is proposed.
But if I may, Chair, they would need to find a procedural error for that avenue, wouldn't they? And it would seem that by this matter coming before us as a planning committee today, we are sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, so to speak. So hopefully there will be no procedural error for anyone to identify.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, unless anyone else wishes to speak, the local member's been in touch. She was hoping to be here today, but has emailed me to say that she's in favour of the application. And no one else wishes to speak. Are you sure? If that's the case, then we can vote on that.
Yep. So the recommendation, as you can see, is outlined on page 10.
Yes,
So
sorry.
Councillor Cyril Anderson,
4.
Peter Black,
4.
Phil Downing,
4.
Will Evans,
4.
Mary Jones,
4.
Mike Lewis,
4.
Richard Lewis,
4.
Mark Smith, not present. Councillor Des Thomas,
Oh,
Linda Tyler Lloyd,
4.
Mike White,
4.
and Pollock.
Yeah, I'm for. Thank you.
That's unanimous. Chair, 11 for, none against.
So thank you very much. And then item 5 on our agenda, item 6 on our agenda then is the update on TAN 15, which will be given by Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, members, I gave a brief presentation after the last committee on the proposals to introduce an updated TAN 15 coming into effect on the 1st of December. Since that meeting, we've had a letter from the Minister for Climate Change to advise that the TAN 15 and flood maps for planning are going to be suspended from coming into force until the 1st of June 2023. That's to allow local authorities to fully consider the impacts of climate change projections on their areas. As a result, any decisions on the planning process will be under the existing TAN and not the new TAN. So, as we were, if you like, before this committee meeting. There will be some procedural guidance coming from the ministers in Welsh Government on the implications of the delay. We haven't had them as yet, and as and when we receive them, I can provide a further update to committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Black, you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Is it possible to know which sites in the local development plan would actually be affected by this change in TAN 15?
We could circulate the link to the flood maps if that's what you want, Councillor, or if there's specific sites you're interested in, we can check those sites.
Well, I mean, you can send me the flood maps, but that doesn't marrying up with the local development plan. I'm interested. Obviously, there is land allocated in the local development plan specifically for housing, or perhaps something like that. I'm just wondering which ones are affected by this. Is it possible to give us a list of which sites would be affected?
Yeah, certainly we can look into that and come back to you on that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Des Thomas.
thank you, Chair. I mean, this is a cock up to, if you look, excuse the expression. They've produced the maps. Okay, they're going to delay implementation, but the fact they've produced them and the relatively short time between producing them now, and the delay when they will be reintroduced is, as I say, is relatively short, and it wouldn't leave a lot of time for measures to be put in place to alter anything, would it? I'm just thinking on a, you know, if I owned a property that was within the floodplain, or the endangered floodplain, if I can put it like that, I would wish to dispose of that property pretty quickly. And on the other hand, if I was considering purchasing a property within that area, I would certainly think twice about it. I mean, the cat is out of the bag, so to speak, isn't it? You know, if these measures are going to be implemented in a couple of years, then it's going to have dire consequences for properties within the areas designated. Someone give an opinion on that?
Yeah, we'll come back to that now, because I see Tom had his hand up there. Councillor Downing?
Yes, similar lines, Chair. You know, it's not bad news that this has been deferred, because we would have been implementing this as from the 1st of December, and that would have been a massive headache for developers, council, and individuals. Because it's been deferred now for 2023, how much officer time would you envisage? And maybe you're not going to answer the next one, but would this mean that any large developments that come in, we would then look to 106s to put any measures into place? You may not answer that, because it could be lead-in, but these are the things that have jumped up to me from the plan that I've seen, which I've blown up just for Pont Lewis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mike Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is all a matter of conjecture at the moment, because the National Resources Wales maps that they produce, National Resources Wales have admitted there are various inaccuracies on the map, and they will have to redraw the maps. So really, I mean, we're discussing something as pie in the sky at the moment, because we haven't yet had sight of the renewed maps, and these won't be produced now until, I would imagine, 2023. So I don't know what to say, because it is discussing something that's hypothetical as far as I'm concerned. So that's all I wanted to inform the committee of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Tom, you had your hand up. Did you want to speak? Or?
Thanks, Chair. It was only really just to confirm that I'm more than happy to send around that sort of mapping information about the parts of the plan that are affected by the proposed Zone 3 and Zone 2 areas. You know, that exercise has been done in relation to the allocated sites in the plan and our major regeneration sites. So if that's useful, I can forward that information. And you know, also just to say, you know, that what's been expressed by members there in terms of the uncertainty and the conjecture is fair, I think, because until we get the follow-up letter from Welsh Government officials, then we are in a bit of a state of uncertainty ourselves, really, as officers, as to what the detail is going to be, as we will have a revised, you know, a version of the new Town 15 in the future, and a revived set of maps. We are waiting for that to be issued by Welsh Government officials. So far, all we've had is that ministerial letter, and it, you know, as has been set out there, it referred to this follow-up letter that will set out the detail, and we don't have that yet. So it's an unfortunate position, to put it mildly, and we hope to have that very soon. We're certainly requesting that we do get that without too much delay.
Okay, thank you. Okay then, well, before we move on to item 7, although we did approve the last two sets of minutes, I did not announce the second set on the 2nd of November. That would be page 7, 8 and 9. Just for the record, that I omitted to, but we did approve them. Right, and moving on to item 7, and the first item there you see on page 24 is the pound stretcher site in Pelican, and that's Andrews, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Ian's going to do a presentation for me on this. If you can put it on screen, please, Ian. Thank you. Okay, there are no updates on this one. If you can go on to the site location plan, thank you. The application is being reported to Planning Committee due to the floor area to be created because the new floor area exceeds 2,000 square metres. The proposal is to demolish the existing building and redevelop the site for a new Lidl store. So the site is outlined in red, located within Garngorch Industrial Estate to the south of Gorsinon Road, the A4240, with 3M located on the opposite side of the road to the north. The site is the former Pound Stretcher store, which was previously B&Q prior to that, and is accessed in the northeast corner. And the sale of goods at the former Pound Stretcher store is restricted by condition as noted in the report. The proposal seeks a new retail store of 2,144 metres squared of gross floor space, of which 1,414 metres squared would be the net floor area. And of this, 1,131 square metres would be convenience goods. And 283 metres squared would be for comparison goods. So there is a table on page 28 of the report that just sets out the existing situation in terms of the existing store and the proposed store. If you can go on to the next slide, please, Ian. Thank you. This is a Google Maps aerial image. The application site is the rectangular building with the light grey roof in the centre of the screen with the blue Pound Stretcher pin next to it. You'll note the current layout with a compound on the eastern side of the site and a gyratory route around the building for parking. The existing Lidl store is located to the west of the site with the red pin, and you'll note that there's an array of commercial sites around, and you've got 3M located to the north. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. These are Google photos of the site. The top left is a view looking southwest across the site from the existing access. So you'll note the industrial appearance of the building and the existing building, which is proposed to be demolished as of limited architectural merit. The top right is the access into the site with access looping around the building. Also worth noting that there are no footpaths into the site currently. The bottom right shows the existing Lidl store located next to the site to the west, just to give you an idea of what the existing Lidl store adjacent looks like. And the bottom left shows the frontage looking east along the frontage of Gorsinon Road. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. So this is the proposed site layout. You'll note that the customer access into the site is again from Gorsinon Road in the same location, but there is an amended access which measures 9 metres wide. The main building would be located on the western side of the site and would face north, front onto Gorsinon Road, with a wraparound entrance to provide legibility from the car park. Parking provision includes several disabled spaces, parent-child spaces, and whilst there are 2 ultra-low emission vehicle spaces indicated, they would need to increase that as noted in the report, so that is secured by condition. The plant will be located on the rear along with the delivery area, and you'll notice at the bottom of the plan there are some auto tracks shown on the plans. That's just to show how the delivery vehicles would be able to access the site. There's new planting around the site on the green areas, and further details are shown on the landscaping plans. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. These are the proposed elevations. So the top elevation is the south-facing elevation away from the road. This is the least visible elevation from the public domain. The second one down is the main frontage facing north onto Gorsinon Road. So you'll note there's a high degree of glazing looking out onto the street. The third elevation down is the elevation that would face onto the car park. So that's the eastern elevation. Just note the glazed access location on the right hand side. So that's the wraparound frontage. And the rear elevation towards the existing store is at the bottom. And that would largely be screened over time by new planting. If you can go to the sections, please, Ian. You might have noticed on the street view, as I said, that the road drops down whilst the site itself is relatively flat. So the top section, AA, is looking south through the site, showing the height of the development above the road level, with a dotted blue line showing the existing ground level. And the bottom section is looking south along the site frontage, showing the levels as the road goes down from east to west. So you'll note in the report that there are no objections received from any statutory consultees or neighbours. One letter of comment was received raising concerns with the retail need assessment, the retail impact assessment and ecology landscaping, and additional information has subsequently been submitted to address these issues. So in principle, the site is an out of centre location. The development plan proposes a centres first approach, as they are the most appropriate and sustainable for retail development to ensure there is no significant impact on existing centres. The applicant has submitted a sequential assessment that concludes that there are no suitable, available or viable alternate sites considered sequentially, preferable in Gorsinan, on edge of centre or in retail parks such as the Forest Park Retail Park or the Ponta Delight Road Retail Park. And strategic planning and placemaking have raised no issue in this respect, having reviewed the information. Whilst the applicant also sought to demonstrate additional capacity for additional convenience provision, this equates in the new store to 337 square metres of convenience floor space. But it's worth remembering that whilst the pound stretcher store is restricted, it can sell up to 490 square metres of food and drink currently. So when we first had comments back from strategic planning, they were concerned that we build this new store that's open and fettered, and then you've still got the existing store. So we have spoken to the applicant, and what they are effectively doing is transposing what is in the original restriction on the pound stretcher store onto the existing Lidl store. So it should be noted that the overall retail floor space would be reduced as part of this proposal. And the applicant accepted that the proposed store would be limited by condition, both in terms of overall floor space and convenience goods floor space. So there's a condition 3 on the report. And B, the existing Lidl store would be restricted by section 106 to mirror that of the current arrangement on the pound stretcher store, albeit there would still be capacity for 153 square metres of convenience goods. So effectively, there's no net gain in convenience goods sales subject to the controls mentioned above, and it's acceptable in policy terms. In terms of design, the building itself would face Gorsinan Road with active elements to the north, albeit it would be higher level than the road, and it's a vast improvement in design and landscape in terms than the current site. There's considered to be no impact on neighbouring properties. Whilst Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water did request a surface water removal strategy, it's not considered necessary, as stated previously, because the building would actually be smaller than the existing one. In terms of highways impact, the applicant has had a significant amount of dialogue with the local highways authority. It's resulted in further justification being provided, and no objections have been provided on balance subject to conditions. There's an active travel route proposed along the site frontage and into the site. Parking is considered acceptable, along with the ultra-low emission vehicle charging and conditions regarding a delivery management plan, which will be secured via condition. The replacement planting is considered to offer greater benefit to the site than the existing, and no ecology concerns have been raised. So the recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions, and the Section 106 agreement limiting the use of the existing Lidl store adjacent to the site as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and for your thorough presentation there. We have Ward Member Councillor Fitzgerald wishes to address us first. Councillor Fitzgerald, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have to say I'm backing this store. I think, as everyone else in Pelican that I've spoken to, we do feel that we need an updated Lidl, such as are in other parts of Swansea. And I think, given the number of new houses that are proposed in Pelican, over 1,000, I think it will be a very popular destination. I understand the issues around size, so it may be slightly disappointing that it isn't going to be bigger than the existing store, but okay, we will have something more modern and more tasteful, if that is an appropriate word. Car parking, I hope, will be sufficient, because I do believe it will be a demand location. I see we're talking of 126 spaces as opposed to 69 currently. So in most regards, I'm happy about the development, as is the people in Pelican. The active travel, that seems to have been given quite a high profile. The 3-metre footpath along the Gorsinon Road and along the frontage of the building. I will just remind people that, generally speaking, when you go to Lidl's, you do go into the store with a trolley, and you do come out with quite a few goodies. And actually carrying these on a bike might present a problem. So I would suggest to you all that it is going to be a facility where car use is going to be dominant, rather than people going there on their bikes. One thing that I have some concerns about, and that is crossing the road. Now, you will be aware that currently there is a Pelican Crossing across Gorsinon Road. It was put there in conjunction with the proposed active travel route, and this Pelican Crossing allows users on the north side of Gorsinon Road, and I'm thinking particularly of those who live in the nearby housing area. They can come out on their mobility scooters or whatever, travel down on the pavement on the north side of the road, and they can now cross with this Pelican Crossing, and that takes them across safely this very busy Gorsinon Road to the south side, where the current Lidl's is, and the entrance to the current Lidl's is just west of where they access the pavement, so to say. Perfect. Now, as I understand it, there is not going to be a similar crossing further east of, along Gorsinon Road to provide the same kind of safe access into Lidl's. I don't know if you can clarify anything around that, please. I think this is something that really needs to be looked at. Gorsinon Road is incredibly busy. If you are a pedestrian, if you are in a mobility scooter, getting across that road is hugely difficult. And with the current Lidl's, as I've said, there is now a solution. With a new entrance to the new Lidl's, the current Pelican Crossing is only going to be useful to any potential cyclist on the shared use path. So that is my only concern, or my only real concern. I do think there needs to be a suitable, safe pedestrian crossing to ensure that those coming out of the nearby estate, either walking, pushing a pushchair, or on a mobility scooter, can safely get across the road. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. A few speakers. First one is Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy with this proposal as it's set out in front of us, very much supported. What I'm confused about, and it may well be just I missed it in the report, but the rationale behind the Section 106 restrictions on what goods can be sold in what part of the store. I just don't understand why those restrictions are being applied, and maybe I could have an explanation of the policy process that's behind that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. We do. Thank you. Councillor Downing.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was on exactly the same lines as the local member with crossing the road, because on one of the paragraphs it does say redesigned zebra crossing, and I was going to ask for an explanation on that, because it is a busy road, and you find out that once they come past the traffic lights further up the road, they all accelerate down. So same thing as Wendy. It's just an explanation on crossing the road.
Yeah, okay. Come back to that for you now. Any other member wish to speak? No? Andrew, did you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll come back in first, and as I said, if Matt wants to add anything once I've clarified some issues, then by all means he can come in.
Okay.
In terms of the existing size of store, as I said, maybe I wasn't clear in terms of the comments. What I was intending, the new store is larger than the existing Lidl store. The new store is smaller than the existing pound stretcher store. So that's just a point of clarification there. Councillor Fitzgerald referred to 126 parking spaces. There's actually 115 proposed at the moment, as clarified in the report. And it's likely that about 2 of those would be lost to provide the ultra low emission vehicle charging, just due to its nature, because you've got to get infrastructure in between parking spaces. In terms of active travel, whilst car use might be the dominant mode of transport, as we all are aware, people do walk and cycle to these facilities. And when you look at the existing situation, we've got 2 retail stores next to each other. As I noted on the photos of the existing pound stretcher site, there's no actual pedestrian access in. So what we're going to have with this site is an active travel route along the frontage. So that's an improvement, and that's going to go right up into the site. So as I said, we see a clear improvement in that regard. In terms of the crossing, Ian, if you could go back to the presentation, please, just to show the aerial overview. The crossing that's already on site has been, I think it's the second slide, I think, Ian, please. Yeah, okay. So on the second slide, you might notice along in the middle of the pound stretcher store on the left hand side, yeah, where Ian's circling there, that's where the existing crossing is. So what we're going to have, as I said, is that's the existing crossing serving the existing Lidl store, and that's the existing crossing that's going to serve the proposed store. Now, once you get onto the southern side of the road, as I said, we've got conditions to ensure that there are improvements up to the actual store itself to provide a better pedestrian experience. We don't consider it's necessary or reasonable when effectively we've got 2 retail stores on this site, and that's what we'll be left with post any development, if members are minded to approve it, to request or justify any further enhancements over and above the existing situation. In terms of the crossing, as noted in the report, the local highways authority have upgraded the crossing, so that's why there was talk about it in the report. This application came in earlier this year. There's been a lot of discussion on it getting to this point, and circumstances have changed over time. In terms of, just before I hand over to Matt, because I can see his hand is up, in terms of the rationale behind the current Section 106 agreement, the existing pound stretcher store, as noted in the report, is restricted in terms of the goods it can sell. So there's a restriction that no more of 20% of the floor space can be used for any one particular category of goods, which is specified in the report. Effectively, sorry, let me just find out what it is. Effectively, the existing pound stretcher store is subject to a condition which requires the use to be strictly confined to the sale of the following goods, providing that no more than 20% of the overall floor area shall be used for the sale of goods from any one category. So the categories are building materials and gardening, home furnishings and furniture, toiletries and household goods, cars and electronic accessories, kitchenware, luggage, storage, toys, clothing, food and drink, and no more than 30% of the gross floor area. So if you refer to the table on page 28 of the report, what we've set out effectively is the original floor area of the existing Lidl in terms of the gross floor space, the net floor area, and the convenience goods provision. Now, as a result of this new store, what we're doing is effectively, if we didn't control the existing store, we would have an open A1 on the existing store, and we'd have whatever restrictions were placed on this one. We're effectively transposing the existing ones from the pound stretcher store onto the existing store, but allowing for 153 square metres of convenience goods. So what that does is it means that there's no net increase in the sale of convenience goods, and therefore we're saying that means that there's no significant impact on the existing centres.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can see Matthew's hand up next, and then Councillor Black.
Yeah, just quickly, Chair. Thank you. Just to go back to the issue of crossing points. Obviously, we have the new crossing right outside the store, which caters for people walking from the north and from the west. There are also existing crossing points at the junction, which is just off the plan there to the east. Councillor Fitzgerald mentioned emerging active travel proposals in the area, and as part of any active travel scheme, the existing crossings at the junction would be enhanced, and a new crossing will be provided at the junction across Phoenix Way, so that whichever direction you are walking from, you'd have safe crossing points across all the major roads to get to the store.
Indeed, thank you. Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I worked out that we were carrying forward the existing restriction on a proportional basis to the new store. What I can't understand is why that restriction was imposed on the pound stretcher store in the first place, and why we need to carry it forward now to the new store when presumably that restriction was imposed many years ago. Is there a reason, if we were starting from scratch, would we then still impose that sort of restriction, and why would we do that?
When the pound stretcher store was originally granted permission, I think it was back in 1979. That's the application reference number. Effectively, that was an out-of-centre retail location. So I presume, I'm presuming here, that was for B&Q at the time, and it was justified on the basis that for bulky goods, it was acceptable because you don't have the space in town centres. Historically, out-of-centre retail has grown, despite there being a clear centres first policy. So in 2016, when B&Q were looking to sell the site, and dispose of their assets, they sought to update and reflect the manner of goods that could be sold from that store. So that was approved, subject to the restriction that I previously provided. In this case, as I said, if this was a brand new store, the applicant would have to justify eventually that they've done the sequential test, which they've done, but we would be looking to see where they could go in elsewhere to avoid creating new retail floor space out of centre. So that's why, as I said, if this was a new store, we would be looking to control it. And what we're trying to do is ensure that there's no detrimental impact on the existing centres in terms of the justification provided to say that this store is acceptable.
Okay, so basically we're implying a test which was over 42 years ago to a store which is being built in 2021.
No. So the existing, as part of the retail policy, the applicant's got to provide need for the development. So they've got to provide a quantitative need for the development. In this case, what they're saying is there's sufficient convenience goods capacity to accommodate the increase, the uplift from their existing store to their new store in the first instance, and they're still left over convenience goods. Because what we don't want is to allow a new store here and then have the original store, the original Lidl store, as an open A1 use, because that could potentially have a significant impact on the local centres and the retail hierarchy.
So we're protecting Gorse Island Centre, which I think is the nearest big shopping centre. Is that right?
Yeah, amongst others, yes.
Yeah. I'm just conscious, Chair, of the North Dock Park Towie issue and what happened on appeal. So, OK, if they're happy with that, we'll leave it. But I do have my doubts about this. OK.
This was being negotiated, isn't it? So, OK, so no other hands up. We can then see the recommendation there. We can move it. The recommendation is to approve, and you see that on page 61.
Yeah, Cyril Anderson.
4.
Peter Black.
4.
Phil Downing.
4.
Will Evans.
4.
Mary Jones. Councillor Mary Jones.
Sorry, 4.
Thank you.
Mike Lewis,
For.
Richard Lewis,
For, Chairman.
Des Thomas,
For.
Linda Taylor Lloyd,
For.
Mike White,
For.
and Paul Lloyd.
That's 4.
Yep, that's
Um,
unanimous again, Chair.
Thank you all very much. And then we'll move on to the next item on page 68, which is Park Cairo.
Oh,
You again.
Councillor Smith, sorry.
I am here, but my
right.
name wasn't called for the voting.
Oh, we'll call you out then.
Sorry, Councillor Smith, I didn't realise you were present.
Didn't see you coming in.
It's 4 anyway.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. Good to see you. Right, now we can. When you're ready, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Ian's going to do another presentation on this one. Very basically, as I said, the application is being reported to committee as the outline application was submitted with an environmental statement and the development also exceeds the committee threshold. You might remember outline planning permission was granted on appeal by Welsh ministers in January 2018 for the cessation of the landfill and the residential development of the site for circa 300 dwellings. So that's the land shown in blue. The current site comprises the reserved matters for landscaping only for phases 3 and 4 as identified in red, either side of the quarry basin. And members may recall that access, appearance, scale and layout were approved at the last committee for these phases. If you could go to the next slide, please, Ian. This, as I said, this is a Google Maps view. So the outline site comprises predominantly the site that has been cleared in the middle of the screen, which was a former quarry and extends up to housing in the north and east. But this application site is in the vicinity of the area, the hardstanding adjacent, basically either side of the quarry, which is surrounded by greenery in the centre. And Morriston Golf Club adjoins the site to the south. If you could go to the next slide, please, Ian. So basically what you've got here, as I said, is the layout that was effectively approved last committee for phase 3 on the right hand side, which shows the dwellings themselves in grey and the landscaping predominantly in green. Again, just a general sort of layout for what's hard and what's soft in terms of landscaping. And the left hand side of the screen provides more detailed landscaping information to highlight what's being considered as part of this application, with new trees, shrubs and hedges indicated. The rear gardens are not shown, but they would be laid to grass. So you'll note that the layout reflects that formally approved, albeit the kink in the north-south road would be removed as per a condition of the previous reserve matter application. You'll also note the row of trees along the eastern boundary. So there's 5 white beam trees and street trees in the build-outs, incorporating the trees of different species. The category A oak tree in the southeastern corner would be retained as well. You can go to the next slide, please, Ian. This is phase 4, which is on the western side of the quarry. Once again, slide shows the layout as approved on the right-hand side and the dwellings themselves in grey. And the left-hand side provides more detail on the specific landscaping scheme for phase 4. Again, incorporating build-outs within the street. And good north-south and east-west links within the site. So the trees adjoining the Morriston Golf Club on the western side of the site would be retained. So it's important to note that the existing permission has been commenced and remains extant, and the principle and layout is therefore considered acceptable. One objection was received stating the development should be undertaken in accordance with the approved plans. But it's useful to note there's been no objections from the council's tree officer, the ecologist, or the local highways association. The landscaping is broadly consistent with previous phases and incorporates both street trees in build-outs and the important trees to reduce overlooking along the eastern boundary. As I did note in terms of phase 3, the local highways authority previously sought amendments to the layout just to remove the kink in the north-south street, and that was reserved by condition. And again, the landscaping would also need to be amended to reflect this revised situation. So the proposal is considered acceptable overall, and the recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any members' hand up? Anyone want to comment? No? Okay, sure. You see the, if not, we can see the recommendation on page 79 is one of approval, so we can take a vote on that.
Yeah. Councillor Cyril Anderson.
For.
Peter Black.
For.
Phil Downing,
For.
Will Evans,
For.
Mary Jones,
For.
Mike Lewis,
For.
Richard Lewis,
For.
Paulette Smith,
For.
Des Thomas,
For.
Linda Tyler Lloyd,
For.
Mike White,
For.
and Paul Lloyd.
Yeah, 4. Thank you.
That's unanimous again.
Indeed, yeah, thank you very much. And then we move on to item 8, the final item on page 81 is the Newcut Road, Moore Road development, and that's Liam's, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll take members through this one. So the purpose of this item report is to seek authorisation from the Planning Committee to allow for a variation to the original Section 106 agreement that relates to this specific site. So the site there off Newcut Road, you've got the housing development and student development alongside. And effectively, the Section 106 specified delivery of a children's play area, amongst other things, as set out in the report. So essentially, the developer was required to pay a financial contribution to the council to enable the provision of an on-site play area to serve the development. So the applicant paid the requested contribution, but following consultation with local members and neighbours of the development site previously, there were concerns raised about the location of that play area at the site. So you could just see, I put a slide there up on screen just to show you where the initial play area was proposed to be located. So you've got, this is Newcut Road, you've got the Bellway site there with the housing development. So the red sort of arrow is roughly where the play area, so on the bottom drawing, it was that sort of snippet there at the bottom was going to be the play area. So there's a few concerns raised by local ward members about that location and the neighbours. So in terms of the 106, it's specifically worded to say that the contribution should be used on land adjacent to the site, and then the council, and so effectively the council couldn't use the money to fund improvements other than adjacent to the site. So it's obviously the situation is the council has the money, but you know, there are concerns about delivery of the play area in that location. So the local members and neighbours want it in a different site. So we've explored whether it could be placed in a different location. So effectively what this report is seeking is authorisation to allow officers to undertake a variation to that 106 with the applicant, so that we can look to provide improvement of facilities elsewhere in the locality. So as set out in the report, Harvard Park is mentioned. So officers have considered the request in line with the policy position in the LDP. So we've noted the new policy SI6, which relates to open space provision. We've considered the SIL tests that relate to Section 106 agreements and the need to be necessary and reasonable. And in this instance, given the locality would still essentially be Harvard Park, essentially in the locality, we feel it would be necessary. And in this instance, we would agree to amending the terms. So I'll put it back to you, members. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Liam. First off, we've got one of the ward members wishes to speak. Is Councillor Bev Hopkins?
Right, thank you, Chair. I've come along today to ask you as a committee to support the officer's recommendations and approve the deed of variation to this 106. I hope you as a committee can see what a benefit this would be to the Landau ward to help provide much needed play equipment in an area that is more acceptable than the one that was first proposed. And can I just take this opportunity and thank you for allowing me to come along today and address you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming along. Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can certainly see from the plan and from my own knowledge of the area that this site does not look that suitable for a play area, not least is how close it is to Newcut Road and the traffic that goes up and down there. Obviously, this this Section 106 was put in place to enable play facilities be made available for the residents living in that particular development. Harvard Park is actually quite a trek from there, and I totally accept the ward member's assertion that updated play facilities in Havard Park would be massively beneficial to Havard, and that's fine. I'm just wondering, in terms of the residents living on this development, which is a fairly small development compared to the student accommodation next to it, I accept. You know, they're not actually going to have any facilities at all. So, I mean, is Havard Park the only site available for this? Is there no sort of halfway site where both communities can enjoy this development? It's just a thought that it does appear to me that these residents are effectively biting off their nose to spite their own face, really.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll hopefully get an answer to that. Councillor Mary Jones and Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. This isn't the first time actually this has happened. About going back quite a while, say 15 years, I had 106 monies for my own ward in Calais North, and the residents didn't want a play area where it had been agreed by the council. And the police also stepped in because of the fact that there could be antisocial behaviour. And in my case, it actually moved wards because I didn't have a park, and it was put over into Dunvant Park with the agreement of the council, the builders, and the residents were very happy. So I can fully understand why the residents here don't want it in front, and I can see the danger from the road. So I definitely agree that it should move. It is a pity it's a trek, but then it was also a trek from my ward over to Dunvant Park, and nobody has lost out. And I mean, as I said, it's about 15 years ago this happened, so it isn't something that's new from today. I just wanted to reassure the committee that it has happened, and it did work very successfully.
Yeah, correct. Councillor White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As I say, I'd like to support what my ward colleague has said of the proposed for Havard Park. Actually, the children who live on the development down in Newcastle Road actually attend Havard Primary School. That is their catchment school. So the school uses the park very, very frequently. So the children would enjoy those benefits anyway. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's a fair comment. Thank you. Councillor White-Lewis.
There we are. Sorry, Chair, difficulty unmuting myself then. Yes, I agree with all the comments, but I'd like just to add to Councillor Mary Jones's concerns about the danger from the road. There's also the existing site is a very, very close to the banks of the River Towie, and as this was proposed as a children's play area, I feel that it's not really the place for a play area with there's such a close proximity to the riverbank. So I would personally agree with the proposal and vote for it. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you so much. Liam, was that just one point there about the suitability of using Havard Park, or was there anywhere closer?
Yes, I mean, I think Councillor Mike White touched on the point, didn't he, about the local catchment area, really. So that's what we would be looking at. I mean, this doesn't actually specify where this contribution should be spent, but it does just change the wording to allow sites in the locality to be used for this this Section 106 contribution. And obviously critical to it, as said in paragraph 1.3, is that if this money isn't utilised by May 2022, then it will have to be returned. So it is critical, and it's essential that we have a play area really essentially out of it, and local ward members can work with officers to get the benefit out of it. Thank you, Chair.
Because all we've been asked to do is to agree with the variation.
Correct, yeah.
Councillor Palester.
Well, I think all has been said, and I'm in total agreement with the ward colleagues and the officers regarding this 106, and I think it'll be beneficial to the children to have this moved, because I can see all the negative points that would be with the existing one regarding the river and the roads. That's all I got to say.
Indeed, and as Liam said, time is of the essence now. Yeah. No other hands up? No? Okay. Well, you can see on page 81 what our recommendation, the recommendation officers to us there. It's recommended that the section 106D, the variation be completed to allow the play area to be used towards provision off-site. So we'll take a vote on that now then.
Yeah. Cyril Anderson,
4.
Peter Black,
4.
Phil Downing,
4.
Will Evans,
4.
Mary Jones,
4.
Mike
4.
Lewis,
4.
Richard Lewis,
4, Chairman.
Paulette Smith,
4.
Des Thomas, Councillor Des Thomas.
Sorry, 4, Chairman.
Thank you. Linda Taylor Lloyd,
4.
Mike White,
4.
and Paulette.
Yeah, 4.
Unanimous.
It's unanimous again. Thank you very much. And that completes the business for today. And let's hope that, let's hope that I wish you a peaceful Christmas and hopefully a better year than we've been through this last year. And thank you all so much. And we'll see you our next week, the 11th of January. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.